I'm Chris Sutherland, recently retired medically after 20 years of law enforcement. Brothers In Healing, my partner Woody, he was 22 years. We both worked in high school, SWAT team, all that kind of crap. And we just want to get together and figure out how we can help our own brothers and sisters because, you know, we ourselves were hurting with our job. And we just formed this Brothers In Healing, which is what we do, is we go around and speak, raise funds, and 100% of the proceeds that we get goes right back to the community and it pays for whatever someone needs, first responder, military, for whatever they need for, if they need to go to PTSD treatment, substance treatment, whatever it is. So let's say it takes $5,000 out of your own pocket, you call us, and we just send it to like 6 families, so I don't have to worry about that. That's about it.
Yeah, I mean, we formed our nonprofit because we felt there wasn't enough being done to help our first responders. It's the number one way that we're losing our first responders. It's not by ambushes. It's not by suspects. It's from our own self person. And in fact, this year alone, firefighters are even at a higher rate of suicide. And what we found is we were going to these trainings. One was called Target Zero, where they want to eliminate all officer-related deaths in a year. They talked about things like slowing down your patrol car, good situational awareness. They never once addressed the main way the officers are dying, and that's by suicide. And we're trying to change that. And it's becoming an epidemic with our youth and our first responders and military. I believe military is now, we lose 23 military officers per day. And it's just too high. So we're trying to do. Chris and I formed this 501c3, and we're here to help.
No matter who you are, where you're from, when you see trauma over and over again, it impacts you. I started my career, I remember let's talk about even if you talk to the older guys for years, you know what, it's about a year, something like that, get about it, you gotta go there, if I got here, you know. Now, be that voice for the next person. They share the story. Say you can help. You can get help life, but you can't stay there. You can't stay there. You still can't be a good responder if you want to make change in your own personal life. You're probably not saying anything that hey, if I just ignore this, it don't go away. There's people out there like Chris and I that want to hear your story from your own. I'm going to talk about, we all have our stories, and what got me started on this is I was the SRO at Marysville Kolchak High School in 2014 when we had the shooting there, and I was on scene that, and so I'm going to go around and I'm going to speak about my experiences that day. So hopefully, everyone is somewhat prepared. I think we should be. It's in Marysville. That was a logo that we had for the high school. And this is my school when I was there. It's very large school. This is where I was, which is the security office. This is the cafeteria. What this is give you guys a quick 911 call. This is my route I took. Not that big. And so what you saw was where I was working with a high school kid who was involved in a parking lot collision. And as soon as I was in there, they pulled the fire alarms. We didn't know what was going on at that time. And what you saw was when I was walking out in that whole area, no one would stop talking to me. Kids were running every direction that they could go. The fire alarm was going, you could hear, I couldn't even hear my own radio. And it was complete chaos. Now, when I was walking through there were kids underneath all the desks in the main office. And when I ran straight across the thing, those are 3 doors. So there's a little partition here that separates the cafeteria. And this is the center door here. This one goes into where the ASB was. For whatever reason, I chose that door, the center one to run into that day. And when I walked into that, I ran into that cafeteria, that is that door I went into, and this right here is the table where the students were sitting. So as soon as I walked in there, it was kids, and it was, to me, so far the most horrifying thing that I've ever had to deal with and I've ever seen. These are just some pictures showing you how the kids just got up and they just ran once the fire alarm was pulled. Because when they first did it, a lot of kids thought it was just like balloons being popped and firecrackers, unless they were right next to it. And so there were some kids that were still sitting there. In fact, there was 3 kids that were sitting right here when I got in there, and they were sitting there just staring straight ahead like they were pale white. I had to say, get up and get the hell out of here. Get out of the cafeteria. What this is showing where our command post was. Not very good. The first one was literally right here, and that's where the incident happened. It eventually moved about 100 feet away. County came over and took it over because they were more versed in this than we were. And still way too close, obviously, for law enforcement. Now that we know that we have something like that big, it's got to be moved around somewhere else. It's got to be further away. So here's what I'm doing. As I'm running through there and dealing with all the kids and trying to talk with this one kid, about that far away from me. This is the table. And I see this kid over there, and he's looking up at me, and he's doing an army crawl. And as I look over, I go, Nate, stop. Another freshman. They're all freshmen. And he just looked at me, couldn't talk. And I remember sitting there, going over to him and kneeling down and saying, "You're gonna be okay, buddy." Trying to get aid in there. I couldn't get aid in there. It was the most frustrating time of my life because I could pop my head out, I could see the fire trucks right there. They wouldn't come in until we said it was clear, it was safe. And I'm yelling on things saying, no, get in here right now. We have kids that are dying. I need you to do something because I'm not a medic and I don't know what to do. So as I'm talking to this kid, telling him he's going to be okay. Now, he took the bullet through his face, went down to his arm and his chest. I think he got 2 or 3 shots. And I remember looking at this kid and going, you're lying to this kid because there's no way this kid's going to survive. He's going to be a statistic like these other kids are right behind him. And it really, really hurt. Because as they finally got there and picked him up and took him out, the aide, which I didn't know before, they were coming around, they were just saying, laugh, laugh, laugh. And I knew what that meant subconsciously, but I'm sitting there and I go, oh, wait a minute, they're not dead. Do something. There's still movement in their chest or wherever it was. And I wasn't sure. To me, that meant life. And I said, you guys got to come in here and you guys got to do something. Well, I later learned, I don't know what the term of it is, but their bodies they were dead. They were deceased, but it was just their bodies doing whatever it did. I can't remember. But when we get done with that, and I'm looking over at the kid who actually did the shooting. Now, this kid was a very, very popular kid and was being groomed to be the leader of the Tulalip Reservation. So he had the long Native American hair. He was an athlete. He was very popular. We know about his family from years back. My wife and I both went to school with his dad. And so we knew about the family issues. And I have pretty good reasons why he did this. Not to excuse it, but he had a horrible childhood and didn't know how to deal with it. And this is the way that he chose. Now, when the teacher said, that's him, that was my thought. I go, there's no way. There's no way. And I'm going to say this, guys. I know as cops, we don't like to say, anytime there's a shooting, we don't like to say the shooter's name. Now, I do. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. But I knew this kid. This was a kid. It's a 14-year-old kid in my high school. Did the most horrible thing you can ever do. However, he was a kid. And so the things that were going on in his head at that time or in his life, to me, I feel like I still have to acknowledge who this kid is. So his name is Jalen. And I remember looking at him, he's on his back, looking up, not looking, but and I remember just going, what in the hell? There's no way, it's not you. Why would you do this? They're your friends and it's your family. Now, Native American culture, when you die, whoever you die with, supposedly, they go to heaven with you or wherever you're going to go. And so he wanted to take his family with him. Now, when all the medics were taking everybody away that they could, we still had some kids that were there that obviously they weren't going to move. We had the whole cafeteria secured. We still had to go in and do the whole sweep the school, which took hours because Marysville Kilchuk is a very, very large school. And during that time, I remember saying, okay, I gotta step out of here. We've got to secure. Detectives are on their way. I knew in my heart that there was no other shooters. I don't know why, I just knew that. And so I went outside, we left it taped up, and they started doing their job. But what I did is I started walking around aimlessly because at that moment, I didn't know what I was supposed to do because we had no direction. We had nothing. All I saw were people coming in. So I went out and I showed you guys the first time where we had the very first spot where our patrol car was. My sergeant went out. I went out to him and I said, hey, Sarge, I saw the teams going into the school. I said, I need to be on one of those teams because this is my school. Those are my kids. It's my staff. And I have to be a part of this. And he looked at me and he says, no, Chris, you can't go there. I need you here because you know the school and you know the resources. And I'm not going to lie, it's the closest I ever came to punching my sergeant. Because at that moment, I was so angry. So angry, it's hard to describe. So we're standing there, and he goes, hey, you got a map? That would help. And I said, oh, yeah, we got maps. So I had maps of school in my pocket. Also, right across the forum there is where the office was. And so what I did is I went in there and I got maps, so we were able to give all the teams a map, and then we could start crossing off which buildings were searched, where the kids were. I could tell them where the special needs kids were because we had the largest special needs department, I think, in the state at that time. So as I'm doing this, walking around, I thought I had something to do here, and then I lost what I was doing. I was just, okay, I gave those snaps. Now what am I going to do? So that's the big question mark is up there. I had no idea what I was doing, just walking. Now this is about a couple hours now, but this has been going on, and everything's being handled, and I'll take someone to the bathroom if they need to go to the bathroom or something like that. My buddy from Arlington, he was the SRO, school resource officer, up in the next town north of us, and he was one of the first people to come in, and actually came into the cafeteria when I was in there with the kids, gave him my keys because he needed them. He took off. Now a couple hours later, he comes back and he goes, "Chris, what can I do? How are you doing?" I said, "I don't know how I'm doing." I mean, it was still one of those, it was so surreal. It was numb. It was like it was a movie that happened. It wasn't connecting at that moment. And I said, I just don't understand, Seth, how this happened. And he's like, "Let me know what I can do for you." And I said, "Well, I'm hungry," because I haven't eaten since 5 in the morning. And now we're talking, it's probably about 1 in the afternoon, 2, and all this. And he goes, "Sure, what do you want?" I went, "You know, I don't eat McDonald's, but for whatever reason this day I said, I want a McDonald's. I want a double cheeseburger meal with a Coke." And he goes, "Perfect." He took off. And when I'm sitting there and I watch him drive down the road to the main road off the campus, I look over to my right and I see this huge truck. And I see all these command staff, and I see all these other people that were just showing up, and I see them take stuff and put it in their mouth. I'm like, "What the hell?" So I walk over, well, they're pizza. And so I walk over and I go, "Have a piece of pizza?" I go, "Sure." And so I took one, but inside I'm like, "This is bullshit. You guys just got here. You're not telling any of us that have been here all day that we have food." And I share this because what goes on in your mind when you have an incident like this, the smallest thing is going to piss you off. So I took that pizza and I ate it, and I said, "No more. I already sent my buddy to go get my food." He comes back, hands me my meal, gives me a big hug. He's like, "Love you, Chris." I said, "I love you too, Seth. Thanks, man. Whatever you need." I went and I sat in my patrol car out in front of the school where it's parked every day. And when I got in my car, I shut the door. My radio's off because our battery's drained. So I had no sound when I got in my car. And it was dead silent. And all of a sudden, I just felt everything come down. And I'm like, "Holy shit. Don't cry, Chris." Because you know what? We're a man. I'm a man, a police officer. I'm in charge here. I'm not going to cry. So I didn't cry. So I look down and I go, "I'm going to eat my food." I open it up. And I look in there and there's only one hamburger in there. And I remember, I want you to picture this. Me in my car, hit my steering wheel, going, "Oh, God, why would you eat one of my hamburgers? I'm starving. I would have bought you a hamburger if you wanted it." And I'm legitimately pissed off at my partner, my buddy. Well, I open it up and I take a bite. It's a double cheeseburger. But in my mind, I wanted a 2 cheeseburger meal. And just looking at that brought so much anger. And I'll tell you, to this day, my buddy Seth, we laugh about it. Every 10:24, if I'm not home, I come home and there's a double cheeseburger McDonald's meal on my porch. So it's, you know, we as cops, we have horrible humor, all that kind of stuff. And certain things like this is what help us get through and not move on, but learn how to move along with it. So that's my car. It wasn't that nice back then. It was still Crown Vic, but that's where it was parked. And that's the road I was talking about, what we drive down. Now, I ate my food, sat back down in my car again, and I wore my phone in my jumpsuit right here all the time. And I never noticed it for the whole 6 hours that this was going on. But as I sit in my car again in complete silence, I feel a bit of buzz. And I look at it, and there's probably, I can't remember the exact number, 75 to 100 text messages, missed phone calls, and the very top one is from my wife. And I remember looking at it, and it just said, "Are you okay?" And again, right there, screw this, put in there. I never knew I sent her a message back. Said, I wrote back, said yes. But I don't remember doing that. I just put it and said, like, I'm not crying. Put it away, I'll get a hold of her later. She's got to know that I'm okay. So I'm walking around some more, not knowing what to do. And finally, I go to my sergeant, I said, can I go home? I said, I've been here this long. I'm not doing anything. The medics have the kids. There's nothing else for me to do. I'm exhausted. I said, I don't even know what's going on in my own head right now. Go talk to the commander. So I walked over to the commander. Commander Thomas, can I go home? Yeah, let's go talk to the commander Wade over there. Okay, so now I got to go from one side of the thing all the way to the other side. Commander Wade, can I go home? She says, yeah, just here, sign this real quick. So I signed it, I went, sat in my car again. It was the last time I'm sitting there and dead silent, and I had to turn the radio on. And as I leave out that road, which I showed you guys last one, out to 108th. I go to 108th. I take a left on 108th. I get to the east entrance where our football field's at, and one of our canine officers is sitting there. I pull up and I stop, and I go, Derek, what in the hell is going on? I still couldn't comprehend what was happening, what had happened. And he just stands up and he gives me a big hug. And again, I started to cry. I was like, kind of pushed him off, said, all right, Derek, I'm good, man. I got to get out of here. Sorry. Got in my car and drove. And what this picture up here represents is what I remember. I know where I drive every day. So I went to 108th, took a left on 108th. I go all the way down to 67th Avenue, which is about a mile down the road. I turn north on 67th Avenue, which is about 3.5, 4 miles, and it's a 2-lane road. I turn right up 172nd into my development, right, left, back in. Well, my next memory is just me standing in my bedroom door. I don't remember that drive. I don't remember anything about it. I remember backing in. I walked into that thing, and there's my bedroom door. And as I walk in, I push the door open. It's my wife and my daughter sitting on the bed, watching our TV. And I will never forget their faces, just looking straight through me. And I remember my wife saying, honey, do you want to talk about it? And I said, no, I do not want to talk about it. I go, in fact, excuse my French, my wife reminded me, so I said, I go, I'm going to walk the fucking dog. Went and walked the dog. I thought it was a quick walk. I've later learned it was about a 30-minute walk, 40-minute walk. Come back. She goes, you want to talk about it now? No. I said, I got to take a shower. So I get undressed and I get in the shower, and here's where it happens. I remember standing there, and I literally, I stood there with my hand like this, and I leaned my head against the shower and just sobbed. I sat and cried for who knows how long. And I remember blaming myself. How did you let this happen, Chris? This is your school, these are your kids. You're in that cafeteria every day, but you weren't in that cafeteria today. I've since learned that, I wasn't going to stop this no matter what. I might have been the first casualty had I been in the cafeteria this day, because we had no idea, obviously, this was going to happen. And so it was the doubt started kicking in already. Beating myself up. How did you do this? You are a failure at your job. Why are you still here? You should be dead, Chris. Those kids should be alive. All these things are going through my head. Plus, I'm saying, I wish I was dead and those kids were alive. And I'm sitting there thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to help myself? How am I going to get through this? And how am I going to move on? When this whole community is going to look at me as a failure. Every time I fell, as we walk somewhere, they're going to be, there he is. You better get someone else in there who does a better job. That night, somehow I fell asleep and went to bed. I don't know how I did, but my wife says I went in, I laid down, and I crashed. Now, my buddy Frank up here, befriended him in this coffee shop, and we had coffee every day that we were working. We saw old Frank every day we were there, sitting by himself. And so one day I finally walked over and said, hey, why don't you come join us? Because he'd always say hi to all of us, the cops, firefighters, whoever's in there. And we became very good friends. He's in his 80s. And I started having coffee every day with him prior to the school shooting. But I had coffee with him every day. I'd get up on the weekends. I would get up anytime, and I'd make sure I went and had coffee with Frank, because this was Frank's life. And you know us, we're better at helping everybody else. We want to make everybody else feel better, but we're not good at helping ourselves. And so I went every day. This next morning, I woke up and I told my wife, we got to get to coffee. We got to go see Frank. He's there. She says, are you sure? Yeah. So I got up. But little did I know, since that day, since yesterday, the day before, the whole town of Marysville now had red ribbons on every tree you can imagine, every post. And every time we drove and I saw a red ribbon, I lost it. And I was going, why, honey, why am I crying? And I couldn't stop. Every time we go, I see another one. I just looked at it. Why am I crying again? So literally, it was about a 15-minute crying session all the way to the coffee shop. I get there, I walk in, I sit down with Frank. Got arrested, Frank. He passed away about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And I hope I'm this way without that old. I don't give a shit about anything. I sit down with Frank, and he just looks at me and goes, man, Chris, that was a shitty thing that happened yesterday. And I lost it. I had to jump out of the seat, run out through the door. I think I almost broke the glass, out to my car, and I sat there and just lost it. My wife went over and talked to him, said, Frank, he's suffering right now. He's having a hard time dealing with this. And so he says, oh, I didn't even think about that. I come back in, I sit down with Frank, we have our coffee, and I told him, after this event, I told him, I said, I hope I am as carefree as you are, you know, because he didn't mean any harm with that. He didn't know what to say. And that's what came to his mouth. But I appreciated it because he was being authentic, and that's the way that he expressed it, basically, how are you doing, Chris? Saturday or Sunday, I'm at home. Well, Woody here, my buddy, comes knocking on my door. And we talked about it a little bit later, because he said when I opened the door, I think he touches on it, but I literally was looking right through him at my door. Light as it goes, and I'm just standing there basically like, yeah, what do you want? And so Woody's like, hey, just checking on you. What is your plan? I said, well, I got to go back to work on Tuesday. And if it wasn't for Woody, I would have went back to work. And I had no business going back to work. He says, no, you're not going back to work. You're going to take time off. This is a huge, huge event. And we don't want you going back. And so he is the one who actually took it upon himself to go to the command staff, who didn't say anything. They were ready to let me go back to work the next day. In fact, the crew that I was on before I was an SRO, they're the ones who responded that morning. They went back to work the next day as patrol. And I don't know how they did it, because I don't know what I would have done if I would have had to go back. Luckily for me, school shut down for a week. So there was no school. So I didn't feel bad about missing the school or not being there for the kids, not being there for the staff. So it actually helped me take that week off. Now, I get a call from our head security of the school district and says, hey, the kids want you and the police department and the fire department to return the school back to them. Because when this happened, as you know, we overtook the school. I mean, long guns, SWAT teams. I mean, there was 200 some officers on scene telling everyone what to do, where to go, what they can't do and what they can do. And they wanted a symbol of having that school back. And I said, that's great, but I'm not going. I'm not going to be there. And like, no, we need you there. And I said, no, I'm not going. Because in my mind, I'm still like, I'm going to be the one everybody's going to be laughing at. And not laughing, but going, you're the ass who let these kids die. And this is what I'm thinking. I did not want to face any of that. I did not want to face a parent. I didn't want to face another one of my officers. I didn't want to face anybody because I felt like complete failure. So I finally agreed, and I said, I'll tell you what, I will, but I'm not going to be in uniform. And they said, that is fine, Chris. You don't have to be in uniform. So my wife and I got up, we drove to it. My lead security was standing on the corner, kind of ushering in cars, where to go and where to park. Stop, she comes over, starts bawling, and just reaches in my car and is bear hugging my neck. And we both sat and cried again. You know, this is the theme. I cried a lot. Once I did the first time, and I learned how to let myself cry, it was the best thing that I did. So we're sitting up there. My wife and I actually go in through the back. I don't go into the front door there because I have keys to the whole place. So I open it. We walk in, and I sneak up in the middle of the whole stage. We have a very large gymnasium, and it's packed. Community members, packed. And I'm just sitting there and kind of my head down. And then when they start speaking, the superintendent, the mayor, and all I keep hearing is, wonderful. The first responders, we're so thankful for you. What you guys did, you saved lives, you did this great, you did that great. And the whole time I'm hearing this, and all I'm hearing is, everyone else, you did a great job. But Chris, you royally screwed up. And I look at I'm like, I have to go. I can't sit and do this to myself and hear this. But on the same token, as I'm listening to that, part of my brain is going, wow, they're thankful? You know, how can they be thankful when this horrible, horrible tragedy happened and they're giving us thanks and praise? I couldn't comprehend what that meant. So sit there and I just continue to listen, and then it gets over. And I get up and I walk. I'm walking down, and Greg Dennis, one is in charge of school security. He comes up, puts his arm over me. Hey, Chris, there's a parent who wants to talk to you out there. It's Nate, Nate's mom. Now, Nate is the only survivor. Everyone that was shot, Nate is the only one that survived. And I remember going, no way in hell am I going to go there and get beat up. Because that's what, in my mind, I'm going to go there and this mom, rightfully so, was going to kick the shit out of me. Not physically, but mentally. And I was like, I'm not putting myself through that. Nope. I said no. And he says, Chris, I promise you, you're going to be fine. I agreed. Walked through the double doors. And there's Denise Hatch, who we are still very close, her and I, and two of her sisters and a daughter. And I remember I walked and I looked, and they all, they surrounded me and gave me the biggest bear hug I've ever had in my life. And all they kept saying is, thank you. Thank you for saving my son's life. Thank you. You're wonderful. And I'm going, how can you say this? How can you say thank you when your son, probably not going to survive, in Harborview, with half a face basically, and yet here's this parent compassionate enough to bring me into her arms and say thank you. And as hard as that was one of the best things that probably happened to me. Because again, it reminded my brain and my body that, you know what? Maybe you did all you could, but I'm still not thinking that. But that gave me hope. And that helped me talk with other people that want to start talking. A couple weeks go by. Those red ribbons are still there. The front of my high school, I wish I had a picture of it. It's about a quarter-mile long fence in front of the high school, and that complete fence was covered with pictures, ribbons, roses, stacked this high of all the kids, and we missed and all that. And every time I drove by that, every day, and I think I tortured myself because every day we'd go by that to go to the coffee place, and I would just die. I would die inside and cry. Finally, we get a debrief, and they say, hey, we want everyone that was involved in this to come up to the Reserve Center, and we have a mental health professional. We're going to take care of this, and we want everyone to talk about it and get it out. And we had two of them. One was just specifically for those of us that were in the cafeteria, and then there was one of those who were not in the cafeteria. But those of us in the cafeteria could go to both. So I went to both because I wanted to hear what other people did. So we get there, and I sit down in the circle. First time I've ever had a debrief in 16 years, whatever it was, law enforcement. I don't even know if I knew what a debrief was. So we sit in this, and first thing I thought of was like, It's like a setup. It's an AA meeting because we're all in circles. And I had no idea. And I go, I don't know what I'm doing here. And then the doctor says, well, what we're doing is we want to start talking about this, bring this to light. We have people at the doors that if you have issues, you have a hard time, walk out with them, and that person will be with you in case something really triggered them. And I'm like, who triggered them? Because in my mind, I'm like, I'm the one that was in that school. Those are my kids. This guy over here, didn't even go in the cafeteria. How the hell is he traumatized? I had to learn that there's all this different types of traumatizing. And so as we're sitting there talking about it, I raised my hand. I said, you know what? I want to go first. I want to talk about it because my school, my kids, like I said, and I got to sit there and I told the story a lot more in depth than I am right now. And once I was done, they say white man can't jump, but I think at that moment I could have dunked a basketball because the weight was lifted off my shoulders from sitting there and just expressing what I experienced on this day with my fellow officers, my fellow firefighters, my fellow anyone who was there. And I learned a very valuable lesson that I've got to talk about this because I was the best person in the world to put everything right back here. Go home, my wife, hey, what are you doing? Or what'd you do today? Oh, nothing. No, nothing? Nope. And I lived that life for the first 15 years of law enforcement. This allowed me to learn, okay, I've got to talk to my wife. I've got to talk to professionals to figure out how I can work on myself also, because I learned that what was going on in my wife's head was far worse. And I don't know, I can't imagine how it could be any worse than what went on in my head that day, what I saw. But when your spouse and my spouse didn't know all the different things that are happening, they actually think worse than what actually happened. So this started my journey as far as getting mental health. And when I was in there, I went up to the MHP. His name is John Powers. Love this guy. I've been seeing him since October 24th, 2014. He was the one who was running it. And during a break, I walked up and I said, excuse me, sir, are you taking new patients? And he looked at me and he goes, well, I am, but I live in Seattle and you're up here. And plus you're not a patient. You'd be a client. And he goes, I would love for you to. And I said, yeah, I could drive to Seattle as much as I hate Seattle now. I could drive down to Seattle once a month or whatever it's going to take. And so that's how I started that journey. So this are the kids. Like I said, I say their names. This is Jalen Piper. The most horrific thing anyone can ever do, I have not forgiven him. I am not saying what he did is right. I am not saying anything positive. What I'm saying is this young man had a struggle that me, you, no one else knows what was going on, the demons in his head. He chose the wrong way, but this was his only way out. We learned that this is what he had. He had rounds still in his gun when he decided to reload. And the other two girls on the end of the table survived because they were able to get up and run. Now, what people don't know is on that day, it was a teacher who stopped this killing. She's about this big, blonde hair, blue eyed, maybe 90 pounds, brand new teacher. I hadn't even met her yet. And when I go into that cafeteria, what she did is she went straight to the threat. She went right up to him, reached for the gun, and he turned the gun on himself. Thank God he did not take her with him. But she is the true hero. She will not accept it. She won't do anything. She's a very private person. But I always have to give her praise for that because she is the one who stopped it. He could have continued on. Who knows how much more he would have done. What you're going to see here is what he did. It was a round table. So he stood up. He's a hunter. He's a fisherman. Each one of those was a clean headshot. This was his girlfriend that he planned on taking. But like I said, they got away because he reloaded his gun. Now, this day, he told all these kids to wear black. Come to lunch. Skip lunch. So this is planned. Some of these kids went out of their turn to go to lunch. They sat at this table. This is Shaylee Kefalaski. Her sister finally graduated. Her younger brother graduated from MP. They didn't think they were going to because of the struggle. Silly Glasgow, Andrew Freiberg, Nate Hatch. This is who survived. It's hard to see. I don't have a good picture, but he still has severe scars from here with reconstruction. To this day, I still have not spoken with Nate Hatch. He's not ready, and I told his mom, Denise, when he's ready, he'll be ready. Now, the sad thing is after this, 2 years later, whatever it was, maybe a year later, I had to send Tulalip PD to his house to arrest him for domestic violence because his girlfriend went to my school, came into me, and said what he had done, assaulted. And so I want you to imagine how hard that is. The only survivor now I'm basically putting him in jail for his actions. Chia Soriano. Now we're talking about the secondary reactions that I experienced. Like I said, the red ribbons, they're still there. It's still every time that red ribbon was on, I would start to tear up. I'll probably still tear up if I saw one in Marysville for whatever reason right now. But I have tools now how to stop and deal with it at that moment. I still had to have coffee with Frank, so that reminder was always there. This is Denise Hatch. This is Nate Hatch's mom. That picture right there was after a tribute walk, a memorial walk on 1024 around the high school. I stood up in the bleachers. I let all the kids go. I followed into the back and I walked around. I followed them, went on the walk with them. We get back and I waited for everybody to leave. And then I walked down because I wanted to say hi to Denise. And we sat there for probably 2 full minutes, did not let go, and just sobbed. We didn't know someone was taking a picture. Anything. I went to Marysville-Pilchuck High School. I met my wife at Marysville-Pilchuck High School. We both graduated. I played basketball there. Now I'm the SRO at my alma mater. This happened. Now I coach basketball. So I volunteered because the head coach was a year younger than me. Well, I played varsity ball. And what better way to give back? So I was doing this the whole time. Well, we got a new floor, and I was so proud of this new basketball floor. And I called my buddy in the summer, and I said, hey, Nate, come check out our new basketball court. He comes in, I show him around, we take pictures. I walk back out to my car, and I sit down. Nate takes off to go, because he had a call or something. And I go on my computer, and I'm like, what's going on? Let's see what calls are on. And all of a sudden, I start going, my vision is going like this. I'm like, what is happening? It's going black. So as I'm sitting there, it gets all the way. I go, Nate, come back here. I got my radio. He comes, starts on my way. Now everything's starting to spin. I kind of look down before I go black, and I can see my microphone. And I close my eyes and I reach it, and I just said, start 8. I don't know what's happened. I think that's all I got. I dropped it, and I hit my head on the window and passed out. Nate got there just at that moment, rushed me to the hospital. What it turned out to be was a panic attack, anxiety attack that I had no idea what it was. They thought I was having a heart attack. I later learned that that's what it was, because I talked to my psychiatrist and my doctor the next day, said, nope, this is what happened. So I call L&I, and I'll get to that in a second. L&I refuses my claim. Nope, we can't prove any of this happened because of your work. So now another year in school, I'm in my office with a kid, and it's a racial incident, so I'm trying to pay very close attention to this. And as I'm sitting there with this kid, all of a sudden I felt the same thing. And I went, oh, I said, sorry, dude, I'll be right back. Went in my principal's office, shut the door, and I said, I've got to sit here for a second. I got to breathe. I got to do this. And I was able to calm myself down this time. Tried to file for another L&I claim. Got denied again. I don't know how L&I works here, but ultimately, the only way that I got it is I checked myself into Deer Hollow. And Lisa back there works at Deer Hollow. We love her. She's a saint, one of our saviors. Check myself in, still on my own insurance, because L&I was not going to pay for this. Well, I get in there and I say, let's connect you with this attorney, and we'll get this moving. And that's what it took for me to get my L&I claim filed and to get accepted, because they didn't want to. I talked about the guilt. I still have guilt. I know I shouldn't have guilt, and I really worked on it a lot. But there's still a part of my brain that still blames myself. As much as I know there's nothing I could have done. I could have been in that cafeteria right there, and as soon as he stood up and started doing that, as a human being, I don't think I could have reacted quick enough to turn, comprehend, and stop it. So I think the only thing that would have changed is I would have had to shoot and kill Jalen before he shot himself. And I'm very thankful that that did not happen. But I would see this. Now, Denise, this is a picket sign. So her and all the other parents went to Washington, D.C. for gun violence. Now, we have different views on gun violence, obviously. They want no guns. We have to have guns. I understand where they're coming from, but she carried that sign around Washington, D.C. And she came back and showed that to me and gave that to me. And again, I don't deserve that. There's no way that I deserve that. Yet that thing is still in my closet. I keep that with me. That right there is about just the Marysville Pilchuck shooting. What most people don't understand, and I know you guys do, is we have our own issues, even at home. PTSD, trauma doesn't have to just be from our work. This is my brother. My brother was a year younger than me. He died at 29 years old. My brother was a saint. He died of brain cancer. We were opposite. I was an athlete. He was not. I don't know what else I need to say. He was into G.I. Joe, fixing stuff, like our dad. And loved him to death. Went in the military. Got his degree. Came home, got a job, got married. And then came home because he knew he was dying. This part of his skull was missing. And we didn't know how bad it was. He said, no, it's all good. But he knew in his heart he was going to be dead. He wanted to come and say goodbye to us. Went to his funeral, went back to Chicago. Get all done, and they asked for someone else who would like to speak, say something. Now, I am literally the ugliest crier you have ever seen, and I'm unable to actually form words when I'm crying. I don't know why. But I sat there, and I just went, go up there, Chris, go say something for your brother. None of these people know what you know about your brother. And I didn't do it. And I live with that grief still today. All I do is go say something. So that was very hard. It took a lot of therapy for me to get over that. This is my daughter. That's my wife, and that's my son. Kendall, Julie, is my son Trey. Now, why bring this up is because everyone always thought, oh, Chris, you're a police officer. Your wife, at one time we owned a tanning salon and she's working in the schools. You guys are the perfect parents, the perfect this, your family. No one ever gets in trouble in your house. Well, this is my lovely son, Trey. He was cute. We don't know what happened to him later on in life. But he was an athlete. He was a very, very good athlete. Everything he did, left-handed, he'd follow after me, and he couldn't be stopped, like football. But in middle school, he couldn't play because his grades were horrible. He would tell the teachers to whatever. He did not want school. Well, what we learned one night when I was working Because we had a couple kids graffiti our entire city, 420, big penises, all over everything. They tore the city up. And we were on a mission to find them. They call us up and they say, hey, we got these kids. Yes. They go, and all of a sudden, hey, Chris, I need you to come over. All right. So I go over there, and there, that's a proud moment in my life. There's my son with handcuffs on, with two of his best friends, and here's where we realize he's an addict. I see the meth, 15, 16 years old, the heroin, all the pipes, everything. This went on, and actually it goes on today. My insurance put him through 17 treatment facilities. We have a joke, because Lisa actually was one of the counselors for my son and me, and we didn't know that until I went. And he is not clean now. He gets clean for about a week or two or three, and then he goes out with a friend and relapses. So we still live with this. This almost killed me too, because I felt as a failure as a father. What did I do wrong? Seeing your own son, when he turned 18, be brought into your own jail. You hear your own son's name run when you're working on your radio. And this was a reoccurring thing for me. So this was just building and building and building more stress. And I didn't know what to do. And it almost got to the point where we accepted it. Now, sad story, my wife more than me, but we'd already did his obituary. Because we knew he was going to die. He was going to kill himself. He was going to overdose. That's how bad it was. And this is kind of quick. We had to start late. But what I want to finish on here before I give it to Woody, let him talk about his quick story. Not quick. Is we all need to understand that it's not just our work. The cops, firefighters, anybody, teachers. I mean, teachers are first responders to me too, just because of what she did at my school. We have to learn to accept everything that happens to us in our life, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, in church, in whatever it is, we are going to carry that and we're going to live with it. And until we can figure out how to seek help, accept help, then we are not going to get any better. And I think we're just going to go down a slippery slope. And that's why we got together to do this, because we like to share our stories, show that we were men or boys, went to treatment, got help for ourselves. Now I went to treatment, came back to work and thought I was fine. I'm healed. I'm healed. And then a couple months later, I went to another call. It was a call of a 2-year-old who fell out of a second-story window. And the whole way there, the only vision in my head, other than seeing the road where I'm driving, was the cafeteria floor with the kids. That's the only picture I saw. And I had another one, and I went, my psychiatrist said, you know what, Chris, take your time off. You're taking 30 days off. You can't work right now. That 30 turned into 60, to 90, to 120, to currently now I'm medically retired because I tried to go back and it didn't work. So I'm sorry that I had to rush through this, but Woody's got an excellent story too. And when we're all done, we're going to be able to take some questions from you guys and see what you guys, what we can answer for you, okay?
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris. I remember the first time I saw him present, barely get through his presentation. It was that new for him, but I found a lot of strength. And what I found in life is it always starts with a conversation. You get your foot in the door with a conversation. That's why these type of events are so important. So this is the Taco Bell where my life, where I recognized that a change had taken place in my life. I was a school resource officer at the time for one of our middle schools, and went out to my patrol car, started it up, warmed it up, and there's one thing on your mind when you wake up early in the morning and you're a police officer. It's called caffeine. It's the one substance I can own that I'm addicted to. The only thing on my mind that day was getting to that espresso stand and getting my quad shot marathon. It was cold out. I still can hear the sound of my windshield wipers skating across the front windshield of my patrol car, and me hitting that washer fluid button and hearing that motor pumping out the remaining foam that's left of my windshield washer fluid. I start my computer up, and I noticed that when I did that, it's firing up, and here's all these calls holding. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, night shift, thanks for that. I mean, look what you just did to patrol and beat them with all your, unfinished business. And I got down and I started reading more and more, and I see there's some type of hostage situation going on. And I look at the location, and one of the supervisors is requesting that all tactical team members respond to this Taco Bell and set up for deployment. Well, I'm on the TAC team as well. I'm a firm believer that if you have additional training in SWAT or active shooter training, you should be a school resource officer, because your job is to go direct to threat, much like Chris did. We want the highest trained people in our schools. That's my professional opinion, and that's why I become a school resource officer. I learned how what soft targets our schools were, and I wanted to be there for the kids and the staff. Anyway, I arrived at this location here, and I get out of my patrol car, and the supervisor of the TAC team goes, "Woody, you had aspirations of being the sniper on the team. Grab your rifle and go down this alleyway. What's happened is the boyfriend took his girlfriend hostage, and patrol has tried to get him to come out and surrender numerous times, refusing to do so. We're afraid it's going to be a murder-suicide." So I said, okay, no problem. So I did. I grabbed my rifle. Here it is right here. We had just got them. And of course, what do government agencies love to do? They love to save money. So they found these standard issue AR-15 rifles, no collapsible stock, no scope, no bipod, basics, doesn't even have a 30-round magazine, but I didn't care. I had a job to do. Let's do it. So I hop out and I grab my rifle there, and I go and I set up here. Now here is one of our middle schools right here, and along where these cars are is where the buses show up, and school's getting ready to start. Well, I know that, and on the way to the call, I told my coworker, who's the school resource officer at this school right here, this middle school, and I said, "Chuck, listen, the buses are going to be arriving here. The school needs to change the buses and have to go on the other side of the school. And the school needs to be put in the lockdown situation because we don't know what's going to happen." And I remember him saying, "How funny, Woody." Well, I can't blame him, because I'm one of those coworkers that jokes around a lot. If you leave your patrol car running in the back lot during the summertime to cool it off, and I have a key that gets to your car, I open up your car and turn the heat on for you. So when you come out, it's nice and toasty. Black shoe polish on the landline, on the phones. When you put it up to your ear, you got a nice black mark there. So he says, "Yeah, right, Woody, hey, we're going to go get coffee." And I said, "Chuck, I'm serious. I'm not effing playing around." I clicked on my siren, and he heard it. He said, "Okay, I'll put the school in lockdown." So I arrived there with the knowledge that thankfully there's going to be no school buses here. And I was told to watch this window here. There's stairs that lead up to this duplex here, and this is the main entrance in, and this is the last location where he is at. So the supervisor said, "What do you get eyes on that window? Report back to us what you see." I said, "Yep, got it." That's my view. This is the actual carport I laid under. There was a maroon Isuzu Rodeo SUV here. I laid down on this concrete right here, and you saw my rifle, and my elbows were my bipod. Well, like I mentioned to you, the only thing on my mind that day was getting my quad shot Americano. I wasn't dressed for the full. I was dressed for the climate-controlled environment of being a school resource officer. I had the black cotton BDU pants on, nothing underneath them, and I laid there, and I remember I started to shake a little bit due to the inclement weather. It's February, and I'm laying there, and I'm looking up at this window here, and I'm like, geez, he's up there. I don't know what kind of weapon he has. Boy, I'm getting really cold. And much like Chris, who beats himself up, I had a situation where the sunlight started to rise, and I could see the sunshine. It was like it drew this magical line right on that piece of concrete where I was laying. My rifle had become pretty cold now, and I couldn't feel my index finger, my trigger finger. And my whole body was numb, and I was starting to shake. And I played this little game in my head back and forth. Do I put my hand out in that sunlight and warm my trigger finger up, or do I stay true to myself and stay disciplined? Well, I gotta tell you, I talked myself into just putting my hand out in that sunlight, and it was like a gift. It felt so good. It helped warm my hand up a little bit, and I justify it to myself because I told myself, well, you didn't leave it out there very long. Now, mind you, my hand is sticking out past the car now, so you know anybody that does any sniper stuff or is trying to use cover and concealment, it's not always the best thing to do to stick one of your limbs out there and give yourself away. Nonetheless, I did it. And while I'm doing that, I turn around and I notice that the media has come down to alley with me, and they set up this camera, and it's on a remote control. They set it up and leave it there, so they're broadcasting behind me now, and I'm laying out prone. And I'm in black BDU, so it's not like I'm really hiding or blending into my environment. And I realized, well, that's not a good situation, because if he turns on the news, you can easily see, well, there he is, laying there underneath the SUV. Another issue with the sunlight is it started to cast more of a shine on the window. So now I can't even see in the window. So I think to myself, well, what good am I doing here? I can't see the window, and I can't report any kind of activity to the rest of the team who's set up, and we had kind of surrounded the house there. And so I requested to move a couple times. Another issue that I was dealing with was because my rifle was basic, I had to look down the iron sights of my rifle. And this comes into play a little bit longer. I showed this video for those of you that have never seen look down the barrel of an AR-15. That is when I refer to the post. That's the post of the rifle, the little iron sight there. While I'm laying there trying to get my position moved, all of a sudden the female hostage escapes. And she just runs out of that door that I had pointed to, and she runs over by the Isuzu vehicle that I was hiding underneath. And she's met by two team members. And I can hear the conversation because they're only like 10 feet away from me. And I'm thinking, well, that's not good either, because if he looks out the window, he's going to look and see his girlfriend there. But I hear her say, yeah, he wants to do a murder-suicide. And in fact, he said he's passed out right now from the alcohol and drugs that he had taken. But what he's going to do, too, he said, is he's dying either way today, and he's going to force the police to shoot him if he has to. So I'm laying there, and I hear this officer ask a question. Well, what kind of weapon does he have? And she goes, he's got an SKS rifle, a scoped rifle. And I'm like, what? Oh, now suddenly sticking my hand out into that sunshine is a really bad idea. A scoped rifle, you can pick one of my limbs off. And I'm thinking, well, I hunt fish. I know exactly an SKS round is not forgiving. That'll go through a lot of material. So right then and there, I started going, well, I'm in a really bad position alone, just from skip rounds alone. Here's the rifle cartridges. Mine was on top, as you can see. It's hard on the ego, but his is bigger. And I know a little thing about SKS rounds. That's 8 inches of concrete there. 2 rounds busted it out. Do I really have a good place to be right now? No, I don't. So I said, I got to get out of here. I got to move. My request is granted. Directly across the street is this apartment right here. And it's an elderly lady that lives there. And she welcomes us in and says, sure, go ahead, come on in. And for you patrol guys, you'll know what it's like. You go to take a call and you go into an elderly person's home. And what's the first thing that you feel is the heat. It's hot, right? Just when you stop believing in miracles, something like this happens. Well, it's a gift for me. And I stand there in the front door as she's rolling. I'm like, man, can I help you out? You know, and I'm just trying to get to the window as quick as I can. And she says, I just have one request. Don't let my cats out. I say, no problem. So I'm more of a dog person, to be completely transparent with you guys, but cats love me. So I actually had a lint roller in my front seat because every time I go to a call, cats would rub up on me and their hair was like, it would stack electricity and stuck all over me. So anyway, this particular time I walk in and I see these cats, and there's 3 or 4 of them. They all take one look at me and they all scatter in different directions. Now I should have known right then and there things weren't going to go good. Anyway, I see this other gift, and it's this couch right there. And I'm like, oh yeah, screw the bipod. I'll take this couch, and I angle it away from the window. just like we're taught to do. Here's the window right here, has aluminum blinds, and the big picture window, it kind of had the old style of glass. I don't even know if it was double insulated or not, but I'm warm, and now I got a couch, and I sat on this couch and my knees, I was facing this direction right here. And I put my knees in the couch and I'm like, I can stay here all day long, we're golden. So I was assigned an officer, and I started to think about another issue. Is my round even going to go through the glass? Am I going to be off target? I don't know. So I say, hey, we got to open this window. Now, in my world, when you go over and you are a sniper or a heavy barrel kind of guy, and you don't want to give away your position, you go over to the window, right? And you slowly bring it up. Well, under stress, we all do things that probably aren't to our advantage sometimes. He goes over there, he low crawls, grabs the blind, it goes up, and then bam, the whole thing just starts hitting the window. And I remember seeing the window flex. We started to open the window because I wasn't quite sure. So I'm like, wow, I hope we didn't just give away our position here. And he opened the window for me about this much. So I'm back from the window about 4 or 5 feet, and we're watching the events unfold from there. This is my view right here. This is the other side. So this is my view right here where he enters and goes up here. The rest of the team, TAC team, I learned was on this side over here, and this is their visual. This leads right up there. So all of a sudden I'm there, and all of a sudden he comes out. He comes down the steps, and he's got the SKS rifle to his own chin, underneath his chin here. And he comes out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. I can feel my heart just beating out of my chest now. My adrenaline spiked through the roof, and I start doing the tactical breathing that they teach you to do, right? And he goes and he starts looking around. And what is he doing? He's scoping out our positions. He goes back up the steps, and I remember just feeling my heart beating out of my chest. I'm like, okay, get it together, come on, work on your breathing. He reappears again, comes out, and this time he turns, and he looks right up at the window where I'm at. And there is not a doubt in my mind now. I know that he knows that that's where I'm at. He runs back up the steps, trips, gets just out of view, boom, fires off around. And I remember thinking to myself, awesome, this is over now. He tripped and fell, he had the rifle to his chin. Thank God he didn't harm anybody else. We all get to go home. And then I remember hearing the words coming out of his mouth, the mumbling and the moaning, and I realized the substance that I saw in the air was actually sheetrock. And I'm like, he's not dead. Before I know it, fired it a third time. This time, the rifle's here. He fired off one round at the team on the other side, and he had wheeled the rifle around towards my location, fired off another round they never found, but it went over the rooftop because I had returned fire. 2 shots. And I remember having that visual in my head and trying to get rid of that and trying to come to terms with what had just happened. Because you see, it all unfolded so fast. Yet for me, to this day, I can still see his rifle cartridge come out of the chamber, and it went out like this slow because everything slowed down. And I watched it hit the ground after I fired. And I remember the footsteps of the commander coming up to the apartment I was at, and he said, Jeremy, I need your rifle. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? He's like, I need your rifle, and we're going to take you out of here. We're going to take you back to the Marysville Police Department. I said, okay. So I go, another officer transports me, and I'm placed in this room here. And I'm given, assigned a peer support team member. One issue, it's the sergeant from the jail. He's in uniform. This right here is where suspects are interviewed. I'm in this chair over here, and he sits right there. I start, much like Chris, second guessing myself. Did I do the right thing? Am I in trouble here? Why am I in the suspect interview room? So for those of you that are peer support, I would encourage you, if you meet with an officer who's had a tragedy of some sort, you ask him 2 questions, 2 key questions. do you feel safe and comfortable in this environment? And is the peer support team member that is going to be assigned to you, do you feel safe and comfortable talking to them? If the answer is no, you got to change it. Because the way that I felt was, uh-oh, am I in some kind of trouble here? And your mind starts playing tricks on you. I didn't want to open up and talk about the incident. I sat in this room for about an hour before someone from brass went by, said, where's Woody at? Looks over and he's like, oh, he's in this room. I could hear him yell at the guy, why do you have him in the interview room? Environment is key. The person that you're going to talk to is key. You have to be able to have a trust relationship with that person, otherwise it's not going to work. Otherwise, what's the point of having peer support? So nobody's going to talk to each other, right? So they get me out of this room. They say, get him out of this room, take him up to the detective's room. Well, on my way up to the detective's room, I have to pass another room where our training is held. And guess who's in that? Guess who's in that room? The victim hostage. And as I walk by, she looks and she goes, is that him? Is that the one who killed him? He didn't have to kill him. And I'm like, this is supposed to be my home turf here. What's going on? And now I'm placed in another environment where detectives are coming and going. Now, do you think I wanted to open up and be transparent and vulnerable when my coworkers are walking in and out? Not going to happen. I went through 3 peer support team members that day. Here's why. The first one said, do you want to talk about it? Well, I don't know what to do. I was just sitting in the interview room down here, and if I start talking about it, my coworkers are going to see me break down and cry. So I said, I don't know. He said, well, what do you know? I said, I would like a cup of coffee. His reply was this: I'm sorry, we can't get you coffee because when you're in a traumatic incident, you got to stay away from 3 things: caffeine, tobacco, and alcohol. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? I just took somebody's life. I think me having a cup of coffee is going to be all right. So he refused to get me a cup of coffee. I said, well, trust isn't there. The second person I met with, never even met him before, wasn't even interested in talking to him. I'm replaying in my head what's going on. Mind you, I could hear the news helicopters circling around the police department, and nobody can give me any real answers. So they said, well, Woody, what do you think about talking to Janice? And Janice was one of our dispatchers. Her husband is an officer. And Janice was a fantastic dispatcher. And I felt, yes, I know Janice, and she knows what officers go through. So yes, I'll talk to her. She comes in the room and she says, hi, hon. How are you doing? Best thing she could have asked me. I said, not good. She says, what do you need? I don't know. I don't know what I need. I can't have any really rational thoughts here. She said, how about a hug? Second best thing she could have done. I hugged her and I broke down, and that's all I needed, somebody to connect with me on that level. To this day, I have a newfound respect for peer support team members because Janice and I talked. She reminded me that I could open up and talk to her, and it'd be okay. It's confidential. So I shared with her some things that I was going through, and I could tell she really cared. Because you see, as first responders, we know when someone's BSing us. We know when someone, as human beings, when someone really truly cares about you, you can feel it. And I felt it from her, and I was thankful for her. They said, hey, Woody, guess what? We brought in a psychologist for you to talk to. I had never met a psychologist before in my entire life. I said, okay. I didn't know. Is this just part of the protocol? They say, hey, we're going to have you meet with the psychologist in the commander's office. Well, I wasn't a really big fan of this commander at the time. But I said, oh, well. So now I'm in another environment that I don't really feel comfortable with. I'm still close to the detectives who are just outside the door. And I know the victim hostage is up on the same floor as me. It's like a little floor. I know she's still there too. The psychologist looks at me and he says, what do you need? I said, well, I've been asking for a cup of coffee. He said, okay, what's the big deal about that? I said, exactly. And he goes, I don't see the big deal either. And I said, yeah, I always get a quad shot Americano. He goes, let's get you your coffee. He goes, let me get this straight. You were capable of making good, sound decisions before the incident. You made good, sound decisions during the incident. And now what they're telling you is you're not capable of making good, sound decisions after the incident. I said, exactly. He gets me. We had a great conversation. He was a very, very wise individual, and it changed the way my perception thought of health. Well, the department said, you know what, Woody, we can't send you home because the media is going to be at your house. Everybody wants to talk to you now, so you need to get out of town. So they say, hey, take the city's card, get out of town, come back in a couple days, just have your work phone with you, and let us know where you're at. Well, I didn't even know which direction to head, north, south, east, west. I just got in the car with my wife at the time. I said, just drive north, we'll find a hotel. So we do. I get to the hotel. I walk in there, and I hand him the city card. And I'm sitting there, and he keeps looking back, and I'm like, something isn't right here. Well, guess what? The city didn't pay their bill. The card got declined. And much like Chris with his double cheeseburger meal, I started to lose it because when you're under trauma and under stress, the little things like that seem like they're really big. I was financially sound at this point in time in my life, so having to put it on my Cabela's card was not a really big deal for me. But it was the irritation of the fact of the city and the fact that I had gone in a room and I was angry about the situation. It's basically misplaced anger. Anyway, we got the room. I walk into the room, and what do you know? I turn the TV on, and what do you think pops up right on the news? Q13, shooting at da-da-da. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm re-triggering myself. So I tried to sleep. I tossed and turned all night. I woke up in the morning. I saw they had a swimming pool. My grandparents had a swimming pool. Very pleasant childhood memories for me. I thought, great, I'll get some exercise. So I tell my wife, hey, I'm going to go down to the pool. Okay. I said, I'm going to do a bunch of laps. I hop in the pool, and I start my first lap when I hear it. Pop, 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 pop. I get out of the pool. I'm shaking. My whole body is shaking. And I'm like, what's going on? And I start looking for cover and concealment, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not even armed. What's going on? It dawns on me. It's a nail gun. It's an air compressor nail gun going on. Well, I didn't feel like swimming anymore, so I moved myself to the steam room. And much like Chris shared with you, I got in that steam room and I was alone. I put a towel over my face and I just cried. I sobbed. I tried to get the visual of the shooting out of my head, but I just couldn't. And the more I tried, the worse it seemed to get. I have no concept of time, important events, and I'm not allowed to go back to work while the shooting's being investigated. I'm put on paid administrative leave, standard protocol. My days were spent at Starbucks creating music. They had this little, this particular Starbucks, they did a little testing where you could download music, you could pay, download it, create your own, playlist. My playlist was, everything from Linkin Park, angry music to, these love, sappy songs, because that's what was going on in my mind. It's a direct reflection of what was going on inside. Happy 1 minute, mad the next, crying, upset the next. I don't understand why none of my friends on the tag team were reaching out to me. I thought we were supposed to be this tight team, right? And we're supposed to all have each other's back, right? Well, I didn't know at the time, but there was a gag order put on saying, hey, until this situation is investigated thoroughly, don't communicate with each other. Well, I would encourage you, if that's what your department does, somebody needs to reach out. Because while you're sitting at home for 3 months, wondering what's going on, you're just sitting there, just wondering. And your mind will play tricks on you, and your own worst enemy in your mind, looks like Chris pointed out. So nobody's reaching out to me. Months go by. I finally get a phone call from a commander. And the phone rings, and I'll never forget. I pick it up. Hello. Hey, Woody, how you doing? I'm doing okay. What's going on? Hey, good news. You're not going to be charged with murder. And when he said those words, I took a step back, and I'm like, how was that even a possibility? I did what I was trained to do. I did what I was supposed to do. You got to be wise with your words. So when you reach out to someone who's experienced a shooting or some type of trauma, you're on peer support, or you're going to take the initiative to call, be very wise and careful with your words, because they can really impact you. It did for me. So at the time, I had no clue what a fit for duty psychological evaluation was versus a return to duty. So the commander says, Woody, you got to come in and pick up the packet to go down and meet the psychiatrist down in Seattle. I'm a small town boy. I don't like going down to the big city. That in and of itself creates a lot of anxiety for me. One-way streets and that don't go through, and traffic and all that kind of stuff. So I go on the station and I run into this old timer. And this particular officer had been fired a couple of times, but he got his job back due to lack of articulation on behalf of our police department. And he says, "Oh, are you going to see a psychiatrist?" "Yeah, I had to do that." "Yeah, didn't turn out well for me. I got fired. I had to get an attorney to get my job back." Well, I hear that. I don't know. Nobody's taking the time to explain to me, "Hey, look, they just want to make sure that you're okay before we put you back on the road." Had I heard those words, I wouldn't have felt that way. But now I'm going to the psychologist meeting. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, is this the end of my career?" So I get there, and lo and behold, I kid you not, there's like 5 cats. I go into her office, there's 5 cats in her office. And just like before, like I explained to you, I mean, I had one of the tails wrapped around in my mouth as I'm talking, they're climbing all over me. And, actually it was kind of therapeutic. I found a new respect for cats. But she was great to meet with. And she said, "Jeremy, what do you want?" And I said, "I don't want to be a school resource officer anymore, because I know working at the middle school, there's a question that they would ask me every single day. You ever killed anybody? You ever shoot your gun? Is that a real gun?" Kind of thing. So I was like, I don't want to deal with that. She said, "No problem. Where would you like to go?" I said, "I want to go back to patrol." She said, "How come?" I said, "I want to prove to myself that I'm not going to shy away from some type of exigent circumstance. Again, if there's conflict, I want to prove to myself I can rise to the occasion." She said, "I think that's a great idea. Let's get you back on the horse." So back to patrol I went. Everything was going great. The first day back, we worked 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. At 5:55 p.m., right before it's time for me to get off work, the call comes in. Suicidal male with armed with a Beretta standing in his backyard is going to take his own life. I look at the location, I'm like, oh man, I'm like 3 blocks away. I get there, I'm first on scene. I walk around in the backyard. There he is standing there with his Beretta right here at his waist. I am holstering my weapon and I'm thinking to myself, oh great, here we go again. We're going down this road. No, please. And I'm ordering him, just drop the weapon, please, just put it down. And I could see, so we carried 6. The first pound of pressure is 12 pounds, so it takes a little bit of strength to do it. And I can see the hammer of my duty weapon going back. I'm saying, drop it. And I watch as he raises his hand up like this, and then he drops the weapon. And a huge sense of relief came over my body. But the sergeant at the time behind me said afterwards, Woody, I'm so proud of you. You didn't hesitate at all. You were ready to isolate another threat if you had to. Well, that's not the way that I felt inside. I finished that call and I drove home. Shaking, re-traumatized, re-triggered. And I ended up at home and I lay down in bed and I fell asleep in my uniform. There's pluses and minuses to that. When you wake up in the morning, you're ready to go. The minus is you will hurt in places you never thought you even existed on your body. Either way, I woke up the next day, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have 15 minutes to get out the door. Oh, I'm already in uniform, good. I just went to work like that. Because in my mind, that's where the real battle was occurring. No matter what I could, no matter what I tried to do, I could never change the channel. I'd be on a call and then the shooting would come back in my head. I wasn't meeting with a psychologist at this time on a regular routine basis. See, I already met with one. I thought I was one and done, right? They said, gave me the blessing, you're good to go back to work. Why would I continue to go see a therapist at that point in time? That's my mentality. I tried to deal with it my own way. I tried to drink it away, and I'm here to tell you, it didn't work. Surprise, surprise, right? But I tried to numb it, and what I did was I tried to stay busy with things around the house. And what I did also was I made sure that when someone asked me, Woody, how are you doing today? I said, oh, great, how are you doing? I just threw the conversation right back on them, so that way I didn't have to open up and be transparent and vulnerable. Nothing I'm doing is working, and I lack complete understanding of what I am going through. I didn't even know what PTSD was at the time. A couple months goes by, 2 or 3 months goes by, and this Hagen's grocery store right here has a little cafe on this side. You can come in and you can get deli sandwiches and that kind of thing. I'm on night shift now. And the supervisor says, hey, we're going to have a crew meeting around 3 a.m. Now I'm on night shift, so 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. is the shift I work. So I said, okay, we'll meet you there. And we're sitting there, and we start the shift briefing. And it's kind of side conversations going on. And I'm sitting across from a coworker, and I go, hey, Brian, whatever happened to those 2 brothers that, man, they used to give us all sorts of hell? What's their name? And he goes, oh, Sonny and Keith? I go, yeah, Sonny and Keith. We never hear from them anymore. They were regulars, you know. they were known for doing grab and runs out of the department stores, and they loved to fight with the police and multiple felony convictions. And so I said, yeah, that is weird. Yeah, we never see them anymore, huh? Well, the next thing I know, tones come over the radio, and I hear two deputies screaming into the radio for help. It's the first time in my life I've actually heard first responders screaming into the radio, and you can hear the ruckus going on in the background. They're asking for help. And the location that they're at is a mile down the road from this grocery store here. So I go en route, and the sergeant says, what do y'all pay for your coffee and everything? Just go. So I get there, and I pull up to this apartment complex. And I did a huge tactical error is I pulled right in front of the apartment complex trying to figure, it's nighttime, trying to figure out what's going on. And as soon as I pull up, I know I'm in the right spot because I can hear the commotion going on inside. And I walk inside, and this is what I see. A combination between these two guys here. That's what it looks like. And I'll be damned if it wasn't Keith, one of the brothers that I was just talking about 3 minutes earlier. I had no way to explain that, but I see the deputies. One of them's got a cord wrapped around his neck. The suspect's been pepper sprayed. I see one of the officers' batons laying over on the side there, and I see this mom standing in the kitchen in her nightgown. I walk in and I taste that familiar taste of the devil's juice, pepper spray. Now, I had laser eye surgery on my eyes. My eyes are extra sensitive to pepper spray. Hey, if there was an officer that pulled this can of pepper spray out, I begged him, put it away. I'll go hands on. Just don't put that crap in the air, right? So, fight is on now. He's wearing women's underwear, teal colored. His nails are all done. He's got blood and pepper spray all over his face. And I remember thinking to myself, this doesn't look good. The two deputies are so exhausted, they can't even punch or fight anymore. They've fought with everything they have, and they're just physically exhausted. Well, lucky for me, I just started jiu-jitsu, and I came across this video. And I came across this technique right here, because I always thought, what am I going to do when a suspect's on his back, and you go to arrest him and he tries to kick you? I learned about this technique called the stacking technique. Those holds are meant for a couple things. They're meant to restrain and also break if necessary. So I entered into the situation, and it was almost like the deputies and everybody moved away, and now it's me and him, and we're in this knockdown, drag-out fight. And he's growling and he's snarling. And I can feel that familiar touch recognition of his hand on my duty weapon. And I remember what they taught me at the academy. If the suspect gets your weapon out of your holster, there's an 85% chance you will die. And I told myself, you cannot let your weapon be ripped out of its holster by this guy. Give him everything you got. And so I did. And it was a knockdown, drag-out fight. I remember him kicking me, much like you saw about the fighters that are on their back. And I remember scooping his ankle and putting him in a heel hook ankle lock. And I remember applying so much pressure that I heard this pop, and it had no effect on it. Then he kicked me right in my groin, and I thought, well, I'm going to give you one right back. And I had Danner boots on, and I gave him the best groin stomp I could ever come up with. And he looked at me, and he went. 2 words came to mind. Oh, shit. What was I going to do? By this time, I'd stacked him. He had rolled out of it. He was slippery from the blood, the pepper spray. My eyes are going shut. I'm starting to throw up from the fight and the pepper spray. So I'm like, he's reaching for my gun. I'm fighting him off. And I'm like, I got to get out of here. I can't breathe in this environment. So my goal was to get him outside where I could get some fresh air. And I did. I drug him out. and another officer jumped on him, and we got him handcuffed. And I'll never forget that feeling of energy as it left his body. And it dawned on me, he just died. And I'm thinking to myself, no, Keith, you weren't supposed to die. You were just in a knockdown, drag-out fight. Don't die on me. I had just taken someone's life 3 months earlier. I didn't want him to die. I looked up and I saw that the mom had witnessed this entire incident, and it dawned on me, a mother just had to watch her son die. The overwhelming guilt crept into me, even though I felt I had done nothing wrong. It was hard for me to see that look in the mom's eyes as she watched her son pass away. Well, the newspaper I came across, I put on administrative leave. I opened up the newspaper, minding my own business, and I came across the obituary of him. He's all cleaned up. He's got his kids on his knees, and the obituary is like, the most amazing person on this face of this earth. I didn't know it at the time, but the reason why he felt no pain and the reason he passed away is because he had done cocaine, meth, and heroin at the same time. He had amazing strength and he had amazing pain. He didn't feel any pain. Back at home, I'm still losing my mind. In fact, one day I woke up and it was the same dream over and over again, that he was taking my head and pushing it in water, and then he'd pull my head up and let me have a couple breaths, and then he'd dump it back down again. And I woke up one day and I thought I went to bed. I was actually having a night of terror, and I sweated so much, the sheets were just soaked with sweat. I still didn't think that I needed to see a psychologist at the time. It didn't even dawn on me. So I kept trying to do things my way. Well, I get a call at work, and they say, Woody, we need you to come in. We want you to meet with a psychologist, but this time you don't have to go down to Seattle. You're going to respond to the Marysville Police Department, and you're going to meet with a psychologist. And I thought, okay, initially that sounded great. Remember the key thing I told you, environment, right? So I walk into the police department, and much to my surprise, this is our patrol room. This is where officers come. These are all the computers. This is where all the people meet for the shift briefing when the new shift comes in, and that's the door that I'm in. I walk in the door, there's a psychologist, and there's two other officers that were present on scene attending the same psychological appointment I was. Now, they're veteran officers, I'm newer. Look at the environment I'm in. We can hear patrol talking right outside the door. Is that an environment where I'm going to want to be transparent and vulnerable? Oh, hell no. I got to wear that mask, right? I got to be tough. Furthermore, there's two other people joining me in my psych evaluation here, and that doesn't seem too good either. Well, I'll tell you, the two veteran officers, they said, we're not talking. And I felt like I needed to go along with that too. It seemed like the wisest thing to do because the situation didn't seem good. But I had a question for him. How was it possible that I was just talking about one of the brothers and then 3 minutes later, I'm dealing with him, right? And he said, sometimes we just can't explain things. I said, okay, good enough for me. That was the only question I could muster up, and I justified that as why I cooperated with the psychologist interview. So they ended, it's a 45-minute session, no real learning or healing took place at all. I walked out of the control room, and there's all my buddies sitting there. And hey, Woody, when are you coming back to work? And I don't know, I don't have the answers. Well, I decided I'll just fix me. I know what's best for me anyway. So I went on vacations. I would go down to the casino. I would hit the craps table. I would do anything I could to distract myself. I would throw parties, and I'd go to parties. And I even got certified as a bartender. That way I could be the life of the party, right? And that way we could all get together as buddies and everything. And we could talk about superficial stuff, and we can have conversations where our protectors show up and we can act like everything's rosy and joke around, and we could take hot calls and turn them into comedy type situations, right? And because that's our defense mechanism, that's how we deal with some of the traumas that we're seeing. So that's what I did. I finally got to go back to work, and I come back to work and I start log into my department computer, and I look at the email, and I come across this email. It's from another person telling me that my wife at the time is having an affair with the fire chief in the town where she works. I lost it. Who was the one person that I connected with in trauma? Janice, the dispatcher. Guess what? Peer support members, get ready, because once you make a connection with someone that feels solid and true and authentic, you are there for life. I got up right off the bat and I went and I found Janice and I said, Janice, I am losing my mind here. I can't believe what's going on. I can't deal with this. She said, Woody, you don't have to. She took me off the road, much like I did with Chris, saying, you're not going back to work. She took me off the road. She said, nope, you're not going to work and handle calls anymore. You go home and take care of your home stuff. It was the best thing she could have done. Well, things got worse, and my wife at the time was charged with assault for domestic violence and also computer trespass. She had hacked into my city's email system and read confidential emails from the between myself and the drug task force unit, where I was going to be an undercover narcotics officer. I had built this beautiful custom home. My friend, he owns a stucco business. He stuccoed it. It was on 5 acres. It overlooked the sound. It was the house of my dreams at the time. I loved it there. Yeah, I found peace there, but when there's chaos in your home, it doesn't matter how nice it is. You won't find peace. So I moved out. I found a little bachelor pad. It was 460 square feet, about the size of my master bedroom at the time. I had 2 rents to pay. My mortgage payment, I had to pay half of that on the house that I just showed you, and I also had to pay for the studio. And then to top it all off, I find out that my wife is pregnant, and I don't know if the child that she's carrying is even mine or not. I tried training in MMA and jiu-jitsu, but what would happen is I'd have flashbacks, and suddenly that wasn't fun to do anymore. I remember getting an ATM receipt one time, and I was so frustrated. I looked at the receipt, and it said I had $27 in my account. But you see, in life, we have 2 accounts, financial and emotional, and I was overdrawn in the emotional. I didn't care about the money. I can make it another 3 or 4 days on 27 bucks. I got enough groceries to get me by. I'm not driving anywhere. I don't need any gas. But I was completely overdrawn. I had no clue about my brain and the way it was working and what was going on with me. No clue at all. And I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, not one time did I think, maybe it's time I go and meet a psychologist. It just didn't dawn on me, because that's not the way we were raised. Well, like I told you, I got accepted as a narcotics officer, and I was sent to the DEA Undercover Narcotics Academy. And I had gotten halfway through the training, and I get a phone call from my mom. And she says, I just want to let you know, your dad has bone cancer and has 6 months to live. And I remember sitting there going, oh my gosh, I can't take anymore. This is all occurring, one incident after the other, after the other. And I looked up and I was just like, what's next? Well, I got back from the academy, and I decided patrol needed to fill a shift. They were 1 body shy. I said, okay, I'll do it. I hadn't started my narcotics undercover work yet. I'll do one last stint on patrol there. So I'm on patrol. State Patrol puts out that they just lost a stolen vehicle, Canadian plates. It's a black, like BMW type vehicle. They just get it out, and I see this car approaching. I'm like, that can't be the car. Yep, it's the car. So we're in pursuit. He heads down a dead-end road. I pull my patrol car over to the side. I say, he just went down a dead-end road waiting for additional units. I get 1 foot out of my patrol car, and I see the car go all the way down to the end of the cul-de-sac. He turns around, and he starts heading back. And I remember looking, thinking, well, there's plenty of room for him to get by me. And I'm watching his car pick up speed. And it dawns on me, he's not trying to go by me. He's trying to go through me. I had 1 foot out. I just got my foot in and shut the door when bam, he slams into me head on. Knocks me into the passenger seat of my patrol car. My head is down at the floorboard. And all I can hear and think about is this ringing in my head. I can feel that my elbows cut and screwed up from my rifle. We turned around backwards and the clip magazine was sticking out, and that's what I hit. I get out and place him under arrest. We get him under control. It was a brief little fight, and I realize my neck doesn't feel right. Now I've got 3 herniated discs in my neck as well. So any type of physical activity is now out the window for me. I can't exercise. I can't deal with what's going on in my head. Drinking doesn't solve it. I'm irritable. I'm frustrated. And every time I drive by a Taco Bell, I have no clue that it's actually triggering me. So when my family says, yeah, can we get something at Taco Bell? I had no clue what it was doing to me inside because I wasn't communicating my emotions and my feelings. I jumped into another failed relationship because I didn't take the time to work on me and heal myself first. And the feeling of loss and the things that I was going through was becoming overwhelming for me. But I continued doing what I do best, playing the role of the bartender. Here's Chris in the middle here, here's me. And, it's just party time. Let's just keep on doing the same thing over and over again, right? That always works. But it was a distraction for me. And you see, I found that also going to work was a distraction for me because how convenient was it that I got to go be on patrol and go help everybody else with their problems? How nice is that? I don't have to look in the mirror and work on me that way. And I realize that about myself now. So we would hang out at the casino, we would do our thing, and Chris and I have been friends for, 27, 28 years. And so, we're really good at distracting each other. We know exactly what to do and how to not focus and look at ourselves in the mirror and repair ourselves at that moment in time in our lives. We would do stupid, silly stuff like this. Can't wait, we went out. For years, he begged me, Woody, put me out. I want to see what it's like to have a rear naked choke put on me. I show you that video for a reason, though. Because that is exactly what you go through at times when you have a panic attack. And I had no clue. But I'm able to relate it to this. If any of you have done jiu-jitsu and had a rear naked choke put on you, the tunnel vision that occurs that happened to Chris right there that he explained to you about when he went to school and had the secondary reaction, it's almost identical. I had no clue at the time that I was even having a panic attack. In fact, I thought it was a heart attack because my heart started to beat out of my chest. I was driving. The house that I was living in now was an old farm road. I had to go down. There was no shoulder. I actually had to stop in the middle of the road because my vision had just gone down, much like a rear naked choke. What happens to you? It's very similar. I had to do the breathing techniques that I've been taught, not from a psychologist, not the 4x6 breathing, but the tactical breathing, the stuff that they teach you for snipers and stuff, right? When you're hunting, you breathe. So I did that. That's the only tool that I had in the bag at the time. Fortunately, it worked, and no other vehicles came on that farm road. A lot of curves, a lot of hidden things. But I had no clue. But my brain kicked in and said, hey, listen, you gotta make some changes because this is what's happening to you now. So I said, okay, well, how do you make a change? We gotta look in the mirror. Sounds great. What happens when you look in the mirror? That's what you see in the mirror. So I did, and I could barely stand to look at myself in the mirror. I felt like I was drowning in sadness and sorrow. Everything, even little, seemed overwhelming. I felt so weak. Most of all, I knew I was a liar. I knew I wasn't okay, but every time one of my coworkers or somebody that I knew asked me how I was doing, I didn't have the courage to be transparent and say, I'm not doing well, I need help. What I was dealing with was the PTSD storm, the secret storm, the one that you just keep private, and those roots and things just grow inside you, and that seed just starts expanding and getting bigger and bigger. And in fact, this next person here summarizes up what happens when you go through a secret storm. That's what I was dealing with. That's what I was doing to myself. One day my uncle came to me, my uncle and I are very close. He said, "How are you doing?" I said, "Great." The same thing I always replied. He said, "There's a couple people that you probably can't fool, those who know you really, really, really well and yourself." And he told me, he said, "Listen, I know you're hurting. It's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up." And boy, did I need to hear that. So I said, "Okay, yep, he's right. I gotta seek help. I gotta deal with what I'm doing, with what's going on inside of me." And I knew that I would never become successful until I learned to deal with the trauma that I've been dealt with. But how do you do that? Because everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And I'm telling you right now, life had punched me in the face. I had taken everything I could possibly take. I was at my breaking point. I knew I had no other option. I had to end the pain. I knew I had to kill myself. Not in the way that you're thinking. I had to kill the old me. If you want to kill yourself, kill what you don't like. I had an old self that I killed. You can kill yourself too, but that doesn't mean you have to stop living on this earth. And one of the people we look up to told me this acronym, hold on, pain ends. And I hung on to that. And I said, you got to get back up on your feet. You are a champion. You can make a difference in other people's lives and your own life. And I said, I got to do it. And I came across this quote from Eric Thomas, and I find it very empowering. There comes a time in life when you just have to hit back. So that's exactly what I did. I decided to hit back. Life had punched me in the face, and now it's my turn. So what I did was I put myself into counseling. I went to 6 to 7 different counselors before I found the right one for me. And I went one day a week for a year and a half, and it wasn't enough because it was simply talk therapy. And that's when I learned there's different types of counselors and psychologists that you can see. Some specialize in family and relationship counseling. The best of the best I've found that I've ever dealt with have come from Deer Hollow, because they do techniques like EMDR. They teach you other tools and tactics. They understand PTSD. So if there's anybody out here that is suffering and you haven't found help with the counselor, just remember, you're going to have to go through a few sometimes, and that's okay. But what you want to do is you want to dig into their credentials and see, are they a good fit for me? Do they have the knowledge, experience, and training dealing with PTSD? I learned that your childhood dramatically impacts your current behavior now. And I draw correlations between some of the things that occurred in my childhood now and some of the things that occurred at work. I learned about lifespan integration, EMDR, and TMS, magnetic stimulation, where they stimulate your brain using magnetic things. Helped me a little bit, but the biggest thing that I learned, you can rewire your brain. If anybody in here tells you can't teach an old dog new tricks, they're full of crap, they're a liar, don't believe them. I once bought into that. I have now learned you can rewire your brain. The science proves it and backs it up. I also learned that a lot of us deal with trauma. I learned different tools and techniques while I was in Deer Hollow about waiting 20 minutes before I respond, because my cortisol levels were so high. But if you take a break while you're in an argument with your spouse, or maybe you have teenagers, if you just take a break and wait 20 minutes, your cortisol levels drop back down to where they need to be. I learned that my amygdala, that's in charge of my fight or flight survival, was overfiring. I had to do tools and techniques to calm that back down. Cold water, splashing it on your face, will do that for you as well. It's a really cool technique. Even having ice water, they showed that changed your body's chemistry. And how awesome was that when I would deal with my teenage daughter and we're in a heated argument, I would just, are you thirsty? I would go get her a glass of ice water. She had no clue. I'm, trying to get her to calm down a little bit. But it made me a better parent. And I learned how much we're really dealing with this. And I thought about how at one point in time I went in to see a doctor and he said, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm pretty depressed." And he tried to hand me a pill bottle and say, "Take these pills." Well, I'm here to tell you, if that's the only answer, that's the same as numbing with alcohol. Oftentimes, you got to deal with the roots that are in the ground that are hit, not just with the branches that aren't growing very well. Well, my thoughts about myself and life began to change. The therapist that I was working with said, "Man, Woody, I've never had anybody that wanted to change so bad and work so hard." It was a very big compliment for me. I came in one day at 6 a.m. for my patrol shift, and the chief said, "Woody, I need to talk to you. I need to see you in my office." What's the first thing I thought of? Uh-oh, what did I do wrong, right? The brain, right? Don't say anything. I said, "What's this about?" He said, "I just felt compelled to come in here and tell you how proud I am because I could tell that you're working on yourself. And your supervisors and your coworkers are noticing it as well." Huge compliment. But most importantly, someone else was watching. My family. I learned how to start communicating rationally with my family. I learned, like Chris did, that what I was doing. "How was your day at work?" "Fine." "I'm totally fine." Because I said to myself, I don't want to traumatize them. That's how I justify it, right? But let's be real. I could be a little creative about what I say. I could say things like, "I had a really hard day at work. I just need some time to decompress right now," right? So now when I walk in to my house, I did this, therapist told me, "Just do this body scan. As soon as you step foot in the door and you're in uniform, you do this body scan. How am I feeling today? What did I deal with that's impacting me that I'm not aware of?" Take the time for yourself first. It pays off. Here's how I used to communicate.
Sometimes it's like there's been 8. I don't know, like it's. I'm not sleeping very well, and all these sweaters are snapping, we all over.
So the point of that video is I would always argue the facts. I would say, well, that's not really how it went down, instead of connecting with the emotion of how my loved ones were feeling. And I learned that I was not a good communicator, even though all my yearly evaluations exceeds expectations as a communicator. I go home from work and now I'm in my family and I'm just falling flat on my face. What I learned through counseling and therapy, actually Matt from Deer Hollow showed me that video and I've clung on to that because that's exactly what I was doing. Focusing on the fact, not the emotion. Well, I came home one day, my wife said, "Hey, did you see what your daughter posted up on social media?" And I was like, "No, what?" And I read it. And that's when it dawned on me, your family, your kids are watching how you deal with trauma and tragedy as well. I learned too that, like I explained to you earlier, more first responders are dying by suicide, but little is being done to address it. In 2019, here's some of the stats right here. They're even higher this year. I sat through a presentation up there too. I thought it was all the hours and training I had done on SWAT over the 12 years on how to isolate a threat and deal with all these situations where we didn't have any type of conversation on what to do after the shooting, what I was going to go through, how to deal with it. And I mentioned to you that program, Target Zero, great program, but never once mentioned the number way off first responders and officers are dying. Never once did we talk about it on SWAT, how's your mental health, and in field training, we covered all sorts of policies, procedures, and things, and not one segment talked about mental health. So those of you that can make different policies for your department, and those first responders or brass that are listening by a computer or whatever, if you can make a policy change to integrate mental health, do it. We need it. Some of the reasons, you want to come join us in this last part here as we wrap it up. Some of the reasons that we don't want to talk about mental health, especially in front of our coworkers or at our department, is we're afraid. There's still that stigma that, oh, that means that you're weak, unstable, and not able to do the job. And Chris, you had a personal experience. So when you go through the whole thing, you know, when we break it down, we don't want to look weak, and we don't want the department to say, you know what, you're not fit to do the job, or the guys on your team are going to be like, you know what, I don't want you to be you can't even handle yourself. So we were afraid of that. Well, I actually got almost put in that because my supervisor docked me on performance evaluation. Yet I won School Resource Officer of the Year in the state of Washington, but yet he said my communication skills. And it was with him. And so what he did is he docked me down. And then I filed a thing with the commander. He goes, he tried to blame it on the school shooting, but that's why I was angry at my sergeant. And so those kind of things they're still going on. And that's why we don't want to look like we're weak or anything like that, because we feel like we're the ones that are going to be punished by it. Yeah, and the biggest thing is being vulnerable with someone that you don't know, even if it's meeting with that psychologist for the first time, it's very uncomfortable. And your brain tries to trick you. See, if I were to tell some of you that, hey, I need you to go see a psychologist, you would fight back right away because you know that you're going to have to revisit the traumas that you've dealt with in the past, and your brain will tell you, that's going to cause pain. Don't do that. So some of it is stepping out of your comfort zone and just being willing to be transparent and vulnerable. This is another thing that we think of.
You do my pancakes? I just buy them. Hey, I'm Stevens here for Medway. Are you hearing me? I'm Stevens here for Medway. Fear of doorknobs. Agent Dr. Confidential. And when we talk about communities, we're going to tell them. And you dodged the bullet. You know, married 10 years. You just dodged the bullet. Wait, you nailed it. Then my dad. Oh, look at that.
So that is a little comedy skit, but you know, you hear other officers talk about how I went to a psychologist that didn't work, and you hear all these horror stories. I'm here to tell you that apply it to the principles in life. Those of you that have wrestled before, tried a double leg takedown, did it work always the first time you did it? When you tried to walk, did it always work? No, you just keep going, you find the right one that fits for you. And I look at my psychologist now, I check in with her once a week. She's actually my life coach, someone who I consider to be brilliant. Nothing like this video that you just saw. It's not like that at all. They're actually really there to help you, and very, very beneficial. So as we close here, we want to leave on this last video about trauma. And you know, the thing about life is you're either in a storm, coming out of one, or heading towards one.
As Ernest Hemingway noted, the world breaks everyone, and afterward, many are stronger in the broken places. But my question is, why is it everyone? To me, it comes down to the strategies that you use. There really isn't anything objectively good or bad. There isn't anything that happens to you that can't be overcome. There isn't anything that can happen to you that within you can find a reason to overcome. You can't find a way to put these pieces back together, and that becomes your job. It literally, when you visit the wall and go, fun. What is that deal? Whether you need firing fire, whether you need that adversity that falling apart between nature and everything in the world, or you find it and the concept of what that literally makes you stronger. It's a choice. And it's a choice only you get to make. But it's in the season, maybe the planning, and then we want to help. Just say, here's the thing, that's your one. You're never able to do it. Maybe we'll need to do less to do. Here's the truth. That's staying in brothers. And it's all of you. For yourself and for yourself. The truth is that it's not your desire. That's not the way it works. It's going to be a way to find a thing that's going to bring you. It's going to say that it's your fault. No matter how many times you are that was not true. They have a duty that works. They have to find you. There will be a way that's going to tell you that it does. And that's where you have to fall back on the process. That's where you have to realize that you don't believe. This is wrong use. And that's okay. Nowadays, they will look at your own love. Where you actually do
What we're asking you to do if you're suffering today, you're hurting, we're asking you to feel the fear and move forward and get yourself the help that you need. Feel the fear and do it anyway. You can put the pieces that have been ripped apart of your life back together again. And sometimes The cure for the pain is the pain. We're Brothers in Healing. Thank you guys. You guys are amazing.